Welcome to Home Care Business Insights, your go-to resource for exploring the many aspects of running a successful home care business. Whether you're an industry pro, new entrepreneur, or just curious about the industry, this podcast offers strategies, tips, and solutions to help you succeed. While AI-generated voices host the episodes, the insights are real and designed with your growth in mind. Let's dive into what matters most in building a thriving home care business. Now let's hear from our AI hosts.
All right, so welcome back, everybody. For this deep dive, we're going to tackle a question that I'm sure is on a lot of your minds. Is now the time to get into the home care business?
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah. Well, to help us kind of unpack all this, we've got a couple of sources that we're going to be looking at. An article called 7 Rewarding Trends in Home Care from Caring Senior Service. And then we also have a white paper from Access Care and Leading Home Care, and that's called The Future of Home Care. And both of these sources actually point to some really serious growth happening in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But we're going to really kind of break down what's going on here and see what's really driving it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not like you're saying some kind of fad, that comes and goes.
Right.
It's really tied to something that's happening demographically. It's rooted in demographics.
Right.
And that's the aging of the baby boomer generation.
Right, exactly. I mean, the article even tells us that by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be over the age of 65.
Wow. That's a big market.
That's a huge market. And unlike some industries that just, ebb and flow, home care demand just seems to be constantly, steadily growing.
Always climbing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got this growing, I guess, pool of potential clients.
Right.
But why are they choosing home care? Is it just as simple as saying that it's more affordable than, say, assisted living?
I mean, that's definitely part of it. I mean, it is less expensive than assisted living facilities,
right.
But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. Seniors overwhelmingly prefer to age in place. They want to stay at home as long as they can.
Right.
And that's because it's comfortable, it's familiar. And I think most importantly, it gives them more control over their own lives.
Right.
And you add to that the fact that they can get personalized care that's tailored to their individual needs, which you don't always find in a facility, with kind of one size fits all care. So that's a big part of it, I think.
And it makes a lot of sense, right? For someone who's out there thinking about starting a business, it's like this preference, like we've been saying, this preference for aging in place for all these seniors. That means that building that loyal client base could be easier than in other industries. People are actively seeking out these services.
And that brings up the point that the barrier to entry in home care is relatively low.
Okay.
The article mentions that you don't need a massive office, a ton of inventory, all this stuff.
Right.
You can get up and running relatively quickly, especially if you compare it to, say, opening a restaurant or a retail store.
Yeah, totally. So lower startup costs, potentially faster growth.
Right.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Right.
But how do you get those clients?
That's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
How do you get those clients in the door?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the white paper, I think, sheds some light on that. And one of the things it talks about is the rise of long-term care insurance, which has really been a game changer for home care businesses.
Okay.
Not only does it make the services more affordable for clients, but it also provides a more stable revenue stream for the owners.
Okay, I like that.
You're not just relying on those private pay clients.
Right.
You've got insurance companies that are getting involved as well.
That's huge because, you're taking away some of that guesswork in terms of your financial planning.
Right.
Especially when you're starting out.
Absolutely. And then you add to that, all of the technology that's coming into play.
Right.
And, the Caring Senior Service article talks about all of these advances that are happening. Smart home devices that are keeping people safe, these remote monitoring systems that give families peace of mind,
right.
Online portals that families can use to check in on their loved ones, see how they're doing. Caring Senior Service even has their own proprietary software called Tendio.
Tendio, okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, essentially, it's this platform that manages every aspect of their business, from scheduling and care plans to communication and billing.
Wow.
But the point is that they're using technology to differentiate themselves,
right,
and provide a higher level of service.
Yeah.
And the white paper also talks about that technology is transforming senior care.
Okay.
In terms of quality and efficiency.
So it's a win-win for everybody.
It seems that way. Yeah.
But I'm sure that there are some challenges, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you find qualified caregivers?
Yeah.
I hear this is like a big issue in the industry.
Yeah, it's a huge issue.
Right.
The caregiver shortage is a major concern, and both of the sources we looked at address that.
Right.
The demand for caregivers is outpacing the workforce.
Right.
Which can make staffing a nightmare.
Right. So how do you tackle this? I mean,
Yeah.
is it just about offering like, better pay, better benefits?
Well, I mean, those are definitely important factors. But the article goes a little bit further than that. It talks about, offering flexible scheduling, investing in training and career development programs, and creating a really positive work environment where caregivers feel valued and appreciated.
Yeah.
So going the extra mile to attract and retain top talent.
Right. It's about turning that challenge into an opportunity. Right.
Exactly, yeah. If you can create a workplace that people want to be a part of,
Yeah.
you're going to have a real advantage, especially in that tight labor market.
Right. Yeah.
But even with a great team, the white paper also highlights that business owners are facing other hurdles as well.
Okay.
Rising costs are a major concern.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's affecting everybody.
Yeah.
Inflation's hitting us all.
It is. It's hitting consumers as well.
Yeah.
And, so that's a big concern.
So what other concerns did the white paper mention?
Well, the economy, for one.
Of course.
And that persistent caregiver shortage.
Right. Of course. So it sounds like it's kind of a mix of optimism and realism, right, to really navigate this industry successfully. I mean, the potential's there.
Absolutely.
But you've got to be ready to tackle some of these, fairly big challenges.
That's a great way to put it. You need to be adaptable.
Yeah.
You need to be innovative and be willing to think outside the box.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground here, but I'm curious to hear more about those promising growth opportunities that the white paper identified.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that in the next segment because we're just getting started.
Sounds good. It's interesting, to see how the industry is kind of finding ways to not just survive, but actually thrive in the face of all these challenges, And the white paper actually lays out 3 kind of key areas where smart owners are finding some opportunities for growth.
Okay, well, let's hear it. What are these magical growth areas?
Well, the first one might seem kind of obvious, but it's optimizing your current business practices. It's about working smarter, not harder. Right.
So streamlining processes, getting more efficient, that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. The white paper suggests, looking at everything from your scheduling and billing to your communication and staff training. Are there ways that you can automate tasks, reduce redundancies, use technology to free up some of your time?
Yeah.
And resources.
It sounds like it's a really good time to just take a step back, kind of assess how you're doing things, and then see where there's room for improvement.
Right, exactly, yeah. And then the second growth area is expanding into new markets. And this doesn't necessarily mean you have to open a new branch across the country.
Right.
It could be as simple as targeting a new demographic in your existing area.
Okay. So maybe traditionally you've focused on, seniors who are aging in place.
Right.
But now you're seeing a need for some specialized services for folks, who have dementia or Parkinson's.
Exactly, yeah. Or maybe, starting to offer services to senior living communities and provide supplemental care to your residents.
Okay.
It's all about kind of identifying those underserved markets.
Yeah.
And tailoring your services to meet their specific needs.
And that kind of ties in nicely, I think, with the third area, the third growth area, which is developing new revenue streams.
Yes.
So getting creative, thinking outside the box when it comes to funding your services.
Yeah, the white paper talks about exploring alternative payer sources, like the VA, long-term care insurance, even Medicare Advantage plans.
Okay.
So instead of just relying on private pay clients, you diversify your income and create a more sustainable business.
So it's almost like you're building a safety net for your business.
Exactly.
That way, if one funding source kind of dries up or changes, you've got others to fall back on.
Exactly. And that leads to, something that both the article and the white paper emphasize, specialization.
Yeah.
By focusing on a specific niche, you can differentiate yourself from the competition and position yourself as that go-to expert in that particular area.
So instead of being a jack of all trades, you become the go-to provider for, say, post-surgical care or Alzheimer's care?
Precisely, yeah. And not only does it help you attract a very specific clientele, but it also lets you develop a deeper understanding of their needs so you can provide really exceptional care.
Right. So it's kind of going from that we do it all to a we do this exceptionally well.
Exactly.
Which is, that's a really powerful message.
It is.
For clients, I think. But, we can't forget about technology. We touched on some of those cool advances a little bit earlier, but what specific tech trends should home care businesses be keeping an eye on?
Well, the white paper talks about that, and they really highlight AI, remote patient monitoring, telehealth, and tablet-based communication as kind of the big game changers.
Okay, hold on. AI. That sounds a little sci-fi to me. How is that actually being used in home care?
It's actually a lot more practical than you might think.
Okay.
AI can analyze data, it can personalize care plans, it can even predict potential health issues before they become serious problems.
So it's not about robots taking over. It's about using AI to make, human care better, to enhance it.
Exactly. Make it more proactive and effective.
Right.
And then, of course, you have remote patient monitoring, which lets you keep track of clients' vital signs, make sure they're taking their medication, and just get a sense of their overall well-being without having to, physically be there all the time.
So it's almost like a virtual safety net.
Exactly, yeah.
For clients, that gives them and their families, I'm sure, just peace of mind.
Exactly. And then you have telehealth platforms, which allow for those virtual consultations and check-ins with healthcare providers.
Right.
So, clients can access medical expertise without having to leave their homes.
Yeah, and especially if you're in a rural area or if you have mobility issues, that's huge.
It is, yeah. And then we can't forget about the humble tablet,
Right.
which has become an essential tool for communication, documentation, even just entertainment.
Yeah, it's amazing, right, how technology is kind of bridging that gap
Yes.
between, home and healthcare,
It is.
and making it so much easier for seniors to age in place safely and comfortably. But, let's be realistic. There are also some challenges when it comes to implementing all of this cool tech. Right.
Of course, yeah. The white paper specifically mentions concerns around EVV.
Okay. Electronic visit verification.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, for those of us who aren't familiar with, all of the healthcare regulations, what exactly is that?
Well, it's basically a system that electronically verifies when a caregiver arrives and departs from a client's home.
Okay.
It was put in place to prevent fraud and abuse in Medicaid billing.
Okay.
But it can be quite complex and create a lot of administrative burden.
So instead of focusing on care for the client, you're just, bogged down with paperwork and tech glitches.
Yeah.
That's a concern, yeah.
Yeah.
And the white paper found that a lot of Medicaid-focused companies are really worried about EVV implementation and compliance.
Okay.
So finding systems that are user-friendly, that are easy for caregivers to use, and don't create these huge reimbursement delays, I think that's a big challenge.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a case of, good intentions, but then the reality is a little bit messier.
Yeah.
But even with those, tech hiccups, I mean, it's really clear that technology is playing this increasingly important role in shaping the future of home care.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the gadgets and gizmos.
Yeah.
It's really about using technology to solve these real-world problems and improve care and improve the lives of both the clients and the caregivers.
Right, right. Well, speaking of caregivers, let's kind of circle back to that elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
The ongoing shortage.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about some strategies for attracting and retaining talent, but is there anything else that businesses can do to tackle this issue head on?
Yeah, the white paper, I think, offers some really valuable insights.
Yeah.
It's really not just about offering that, that competitive pay and perks, but it's about creating a work environment that truly values those caregivers and invests in their professional growth.
So it's going beyond just the transactional.
Exactly.
And building a culture of respect, appreciation.
Exactly, yeah. Think about things like flexible scheduling.
Right.
Offering them opportunities for professional development, creating recognition programs to celebrate their hard work.
Yeah. So making them feel like they're valued members of a team.
Exactly.
And not just, kind of cogs in a machine.
Yeah, and then giving them the tools and resources and support that they need to really succeed.
Right. And of course, happy, fulfilled caregivers, that translates into happy, well cared for clients.
Exactly, yeah.
So win-win, right?
Everybody wins.
For everybody.
And it all comes back to, the human connection. It's that bond between the caregiver and the client.
Yeah.
The moments of laughter, the companionship, the feeling that you've got someone there, to lend a hand, a listening ear. I mean, in a world that can feel very isolating, especially for seniors, that connection is just so invaluable.
It is, yeah. It's what makes, home care so much more than just, a service.
Right.
It's a lifeline.
It is.
It really is. And for entrepreneurs and, business owners, it's that reminder, I think, that success in this industry is not just about profits, right?
Yeah.
And growth, but it's also about making a positive impact
It is, yeah.
on people's lives.
Yeah.
It's about building a business with a heart.
I think the home care industry is full of challenges,
Right.
but it's also full of opportunities.
Yeah.
It's a chance to build a business that is both profitable and purposeful.
Yeah. And that makes a difference.
Exactly. In the lives of your clients, your caregivers, and your community.
Right. And speaking of caregivers, let's go back to that topic, because I think there's a lot more to unpack there.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in, all the numbers and the bottom line and everything, but we can't forget about the people. This industry is all about people taking care of people.
It really is. I mean, it's about those little moments, those everyday moments of connection and compassion. And that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, for sure.
So, for all the entrepreneurs and future business owners out there, how do you kind of balance those practical demands of, running a successful business with the heart-centered mission of, actually providing really good care?
Well, I think it starts with remembering why you got into this business in the first place. Was it to just make a quick buck? Or was it to actually make a real difference in people's lives?
Yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of people who are drawn to home care, it's the latter.
Yeah.
They see a need and they want to help. But then you've got payroll, you've got regulations, competition. It's easy to lose sight of why you started, that initial spark.
It is. And that's why it's so important to build a company culture that reflects your values.
Yeah.
If you genuinely care about your clients and your caregivers, that will show in everything that you do, from the services you offer to the way you interact with your team.
Right. So it's about walking the walk.
Absolutely.
Not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
Actions speak louder than words.
They do. Especially in a business like this that's all about people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I think one of the most powerful things you can do is invest in your caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've touched on this a little bit before, but it's worth repeating. Your caregivers are the face of your company.
They are.
They're the ones who are out there every day providing that care and companionship.
Mm.
And that makes a real difference in your clients' lives.
They're the ones that are making it happen.
They are. So how do you go beyond, just a decent wage and benefits package? How do you create that environment that really attracts and keeps top talent?
Well, it's about creating that culture of respect and appreciation and support. Offering that flexible scheduling that we talked about earlier, allowing for professional development and advancement, really recognizing them for their hard work and dedication.
It's about making them feel like they're valued members of the team.
Exactly. Yeah. And giving them the power to, provide the best possible care by, making sure they have the training and the resources and the support that they need.
And of course, happy, fulfilled caregivers, that just naturally translates into happy, well-cared-for clients.
It does. Yeah. Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. And that brings us back to, the heart of it all.
Mm-hmm.
The human connection, it's that bond between the caregiver and the client.
Yeah.
Those moments of laughter, the companionship, the feeling of knowing that someone's there to help you out and lend a listening ear.
Absolutely.
It's really invaluable.
It is, yeah. And I think for those entrepreneurs and those business owners out there, it's a reminder that success in this industry isn't just about the profits and the growth. It's about making a positive impact on people's lives.
It's about building a business with a heart.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive into the world of home care. It's an industry that's full of challenges, but also, like we've been saying, a lot of exciting opportunities. So we encourage everyone out there to, embrace those challenges, seize the opportunities, and really help us all shape the future of home care. Thanks for joining us.